Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby-peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals. Ozcast.
Yeah, hello, Nest family. Great to be with you again. Had a little hiatus after the disappointing performance against the Blues, but we are back after giving the Hawks a bit of a scare, which was an encouraging display against them, but ultimately not quite enough. And we look ahead to a game against St Kilda this week, which probably is a winnable one. Drew Jones, hello to you, mate. How are you feeling after the last couple of weeks in regards to our beloved West Coast Eagles?
G'day, Garby. Yeah, so I kind of liked the 3-week block that we had where we got to play against a couple of, I guess a medium team in Richmond who we challenged at the G, and then a very good team in Carlton who we challenged for 1.5, 2 quarters. And then let's face it, Hawthorn are a pretty average side. I didn't think we played particularly well on Sunday, but we saw a couple of little glimmers and sparks here and there. But to come out of that run 0-3, probably a little disappointing. It would have been nice to nab one of those 3, but it probably just shows that we really are sitting about probably where we are. We're probably a slightly better team than Adelaide, I reckon, but we're down the lower rungs for a reason.
Yeah, maybe we can nab 1 or 2 on the way in. I wonder whether Adam Simpson is wrestling at the moment with, we've heard him say little wins for the last 3 months, basically. It's about focusing on gradual improvement and things like that, which was necessary for a period of time. But I was watching the game on Sunday thinking, there's some improvement there, but we're only playing the Hawks. They're pretty average as well. The game was there for the taking at stages. Tim Culley gets a knock that affects our chances enormously. Of course, yes, we're still missing Nick Nat and Yowie and Gov and Oscar Allen and Tommy Cole and Dom Shee. We're still missing a lot of players. But I just wonder if he is finding the right balance between focusing on those little wins and also drumming home how important it is to actually win. Like it's not okay to walk off feeling good about yourself because you've had little wins in a game that you've lost by 4 goals to another average team. Do you know what I mean? Like getting that balance right is going to be a tricky one, I think, for him.
So were you unhappy with the balance that was struck on Sunday?
No, I wasn't. I'm just concerned about how he's balancing it moving forward. I'm not saying he's not getting it right, but I just wonder if, there's still that message being drummed in, and it probably is, but I hope it is as a fan that it's still being sent to the players that, you can be encouraged by where we're going, but it's still not okay to lose. Like you don't fly back feeling great about yourself when you've lost a game that was winnable. Doesn't mean that you read them the riot act. That would be silly. That would only drum down their confidence even more. You don't need that. But that same message needs to be, we still need to try and win these games and be absolutely filthy if we don't. And it probably is, but I just wonder how he's striking that chord at the moment because he's been so focused on the little wins and the gradual improvement.
I would hope behind closed doors that he would have spelled out to the players that there was some unacceptable stuff and that Hawks are not a very good football side.
Yeah.
But I think the reality is that if McGovern, Nick Nat and Yo were playing, then we'd probably win the game.
Yeah.
So Nick Nat has shown in the 4 games that he's played that he's clearly our most important player. And every time the Hawks needed a clearance on the weekend, they pretty much got it. And then you add Yo down back and McGovern as well to help out Barrass. And I think it's a vastly different game. But, we don't have them playing. So, that's neither here nor there. But it is a tough one. We've got a little bit of room to manoeuvre, don't we? Because the team above us on the ladder has 4 wins, right? So even if we can go hard and try and win a couple of games in the last 5 weeks and not jeopardise the draft pick. So I think that's actually a good position for Adam Simpson to be in because he doesn't have to. It's always awkward because we want the highest pick possible. That's obvious. But we also don't want to create a losing culture. So if we can strike that balance in the last couple of weeks, knowing that we've got a bit of leeway if we win a game, I think that's a good result for us.
The number one pick is now, after North's surprise win, still a possibility, which would end up being the number 2 pick, because I don't think anyone expects Will Ashcroft to say no to Brisbane ultimately. Do you think, and we're straying from the game here, we'll get back into the Hawthorn game in a second, but do you think we take like Elijah Hewitt no matter what because he's a WA kid? What do you reckon they might do there? Like, my point is, would it matter if we pick 2 or pick 3 because we're going to end up taking Elijah Hewitt regardless?
Yeah, so almost what West Coast might want to happen is for Hewitt to not play too well and for a couple of Vic Metro boys to go nuts and then have the opportunity to potentially say to an Essendon or whoever, like, do you want to creep forward?
Yeah. And
then we just pick up a bonus pick somewhere along the line, because I'm not sure that Hewitt is the number 2 or what ends up being number 3 pick in the draft. I mean, maybe he ends up being that, but I just think that there's just no scenario where we don't take Hewitt.
Yeah.
So
I just hope,
if we can potentially upgrade a pick somewhere else and slide back a couple of spots to get him, then I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I just hope we don't take an inferior player, and I'm not saying Hewitt will be, we don't take an inferior player just because they're from WA. I wouldn't think we would do that, but I just hope that they don't go, it's Hewitt no matter what. And then, all of a sudden we've got pick 1 ends up being pick 2, and there's actually, 2 or 3 guys who are clearly above Hewitt on the draft order, but we say, no, we're just going the WA player. Like, I just don't want us to be that club. We haven't been in the past. I don't think we would be. We took Campbell Chester in the first round last season, Victorian Metro boy. So I don't think we would be, but yeah, I'm not too sure if we're just locked into Elijah Hewitt no matter what. I would think that's unlikely to be the case.
I think a lot will depend on the interviews. So to me, it feels like the go home factor has never been worse. And you've now got players saying in interviews, I don't want to move interstate.
Yeah.
And there's player empowerment issues, and which is, I guess, in some ways is great. But I don't like. We might see Horn Francis only stay at North for 2 years and then go back and play for the Crows or for Port Adelaide. I don't think being a one club player matters to as many AFL players anymore as it used to. No. It might to some, but like clearly North Melbourne didn't pick up Logan McDonald because he's from WA and must have made some noises about it. Sydney were like, nah, we don't care. We're back in the culture. North went the safe pick with Will Phillips, who was, underage, playing with Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson and holding his own. Yeah. Who knows how it all turns out? Right now it looks terrible for them on paper, but you just never know. So it's a tough one. If they have a meeting with some of the, is it Sheasel or one of the
Harry Sheasel's right up there. Yeah.
If Sheasel goes, I've got no interest in living in WA, they'll be like, all right, well, we're not picking you. Or if he goes, geez, actually, I love surfing and I want to move out of home and experience life, then lock in Sheasel potentially. So,
but let's not forget, Drewy, there's a kid called Chris Judd whose mother told the Eagles, I don't want my son going over there. Please don't take him. And West Coast said, well, we are. And how did that work out? Like sometimes you've just got to do it. It's
tough. I mean, Judd they must have thought Judd was a generational talent, and he was. They were right.
But I just don't see this is a good discussion to have, and we'll get onto the Hawthorn game in a moment, but I just don't see the benefit in picking an inferior player because they might go home. Because ultimately, yes, you back yourself to win them over. Like how many players have come over? Chris Judd wanted to leave after 2 years. Let's not forget that. Like his first year, he told a lot of people, like, oh, yeah, I don't think I'll be signing another contract. He signed 2 more because he loved the culture. He loved how hard we trained. He matured and grew as a person and realised the benefits and grew up. And we'd taken these kids at 17, 18. They change mentally. And so he chose to stay. But even if they do still choose to leave, if you're taking the better player, like Adam Chera, for example, you're going to get maximum compensation. So Adam Chera leaves. All right, that's a shame. They put a lot of work into him. 2 top 5 best and fairest of Freo. They get a Neil Erasmus in return. Haven't lost anything.
Yeah, but you do lose those years of development.
Yeah, you lose those years of development. You're still getting like a gun player in. And I think the benefits of making that call and backing yourself and saying, well, at least we gave it a crack. He goes, well, we're going to get really good compensation back. As opposed to taking someone who you actually know is not as good of a footballer and you're potentially making your team weaker in time to come. If it's a 50-50 call, yeah, by all means. But if it's not, I don't see any justification for taking the inferior player just because they're from WA.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting discussion, and I don't disagree with you and the theory behind it. I mean, if we traded Essendon pick 2 and they gave us a second rounder and we traded that to Brisbane to get Dev Robertson and we end up with Elijah and Robertson, I wouldn't be unhappy with that. So anyway,
yeah.
It's all in our future.
Yeah, but it's pertinent for us right now because we're focusing on that a lot as Eagles fans. So
for sure,
it's a good discussion to have. Anyway, the Hawthorn game, we started really nicely. Tim Kelly gets a corky and that changes the game a lot for us because he was looking really good. They were tagging him. He was breaking that tag. But once he gets that big corky, he just can't run. Credit him for soldiering on. He tried his best, but, we were always behind the 8 ball after that. And if it wasn't for Tommy Barrass playing out of his skin, what a game he had. 10 coaches' votes in a match that we lost. Breaks the Eagles' marks record. Shut down Mitch Lewis, one of the key forwards, informed forwards in the competition. He was fantastic, Tommy Barrass, and I think he's a good chance to be in the All-Australian squad. I think he's almost a certainty, barring injury, to win his first, best and fairest at the Eagles. And who knows, maybe he's in discussions for a Blazer. Very competitive, the key defensive options. I think Sammy Taylor's a lock. Obviously, Stephen May, James Sicily is very likely. But Tommy, maybe he gets mentioned a little bit more earnestly than, 3 to 4 weeks ago.
I think the conversation is worth having. He'd have to come home. He'd have to play a couple more massive games like that.
Yeah.
I just think the conversation around West Coast players being in the All-Australian team this season is going to be tough because of where they are on the ladder.
Yeah.
But that could potentially go down as a top 5 performance by a defender in West Coast history. And I know the game doesn't mean that much. And when you talk about big games and deciding premierships and stuff, that probably doesn't rank alongside those. But he was a literal wall against a guy who kicked 5 goals last week and averages 3 per game, I think, this season. What a bloody performance. He was unreal.
Fantastic.
I'm trying to get his intercept possession numbers. I'm just got it up on my phone.
A lot of his marks were cheapies, of course. But
yeah. So 11
work, just brilliant.
11 intercept possessions.
Great.
18 marks. And he also shuts down Lewis. So, yeah, it's a pretty bloody good performance. Is there a chance that Tom Barrass could be West Coast captain?
That's a good question. That's a very good question.
If Shuey was to hand it over, let's say, and McGovern, is McGovern a similar age to Shuey?
I'd say be maybe a year younger, 1 or 2 years younger.
Then Nick Nat's probably got 1 to 2 years left.
Yeah.
Is Tom Barrass the next captain of West Coast?
That's a very good shout. Yeah. I don't think he's been mentioned in those dispatches before, and I'm not too sure why. But, players like Liam Duggan and Oscar Allen had been mentioned above Tommy Barrass. I would say he'd be a very good chance. Very strong chance. I think it's an excellent point you raise. And, is he vocal enough? I think so. I think he used to be a little bit of a joker, a little bit chilled. I think he's grown up a lot in the last couple of years. He's had a tragedy in his life with his father passing, and I'm not sure how that's framed him as a person, but you just see the way in which he speaks, even to, West Coast Eagles media. And yeah, he seems to have matured a bit in that sense. And I think he's a fantastic candidate. I think that's a really good shout.
Yeah, I just listening to him talk now and the way that he speaks about football and life and all that sort of stuff, I think he's got a pretty good balance and a good grasp on all of it. I still think Shuey's the dad. He has all the young boys over for barbecues and plays with the dogs. And, I think Shuey's got a massive role to play in that space, but maybe it doesn't have to come with the title of captaincy. But also I don't think Simo's knocking on Shuey's door and saying, hand it back. I think those two have forged such a strong relationship as captain and coach. It'd have to be Shuey's decision, most likely.
You would think so. But they've also got to evolve the list in a leadership sense as well. And they might have that discussion and say it's time for someone else to take over. This is where we're at. Yeah, who knows? I don't think it's a massive issue either way. If Shuey decides to keep it for another year or so. Now that he's getting regular footy, I mean, we had the discussion when he was having all these injuries. If they happen again, then yeah, you've got to make the change. But yeah, Tommy Barrass right up there. That's a very good call. Shannon Hearn. Have we changed our mind on whether Shannon Hearn actually plays again next season or not? We'd come to the conclusion. I mean, JK obviously definitely retires, no question there. Could you see another one in Shannon Hearn potentially, the way he's going?
Absolutely. Yeah. His form is certainly good enough. Even a few times early in the season, I was looking at him and I was like, he looks really old all of a sudden. But I haven't thought that as much lately. He's definitely in good form. Do you think it's best for the club moving forward that he plays another year?
That's the question to ask. I think when he's playing this well, then yes. If he was just going at like 6.5 out of 10 and doing a job, then I'd say it's probably best to move him aside and start evolving things. But he's playing at a 7.5, 8. Well, it has been over the last month. Sort of 7.5, 8 out of 10. If he holds that form for the rest of the season, finishes the campaign, sits down and goes, my body's good. Like I'm feeling fine. Then go one more.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like Foley had to play forward on the weekend and Rotham wasn't in the team.
Yeah.
Would you like those guys to be getting a full opportunity to play a settled role down back, potentially? That's the tough one. So it's probably in Shannon Hearn's hands, really.
I think if he wants to play and he feels confident in his body, go around one more time. JK's going to go, he'll retire. There'll be list changes, what they do with Andrew Gaff. We've discussed it numerous times. Don't have to dwell on it today, but there'll be guys who'll be moved on. So all that has to come into account as well. Jumping Jai Culley. Didn't jump too much. He was tough in the clinches. I don't think we really knew what to expect in terms of the role he would play. He played a lot more inside mid than I expected, but did that really well. His tackling was fantastic. His contested work was great. Didn't see too much of what he could do on the outside, which is the interesting part. But a more than encouraging debut from the number 1 mid-season draft pick.
Do you think that they gave him a really simple role for the day and they were just get in there and get your hands dirty?
Yeah, maybe.
Because 11 tackles on debut, it's the most ever by an Eagle. It's the second most ever from an AFL debutant. Newcombe had 14 on debut. I liked it.
Liked it a lot. I think we all envisaged his role would be someone who plays in the midfield and then drifts forward. That's what we saw in the highlight packages, right? A tall midfielder who can, go in there and win a contest, but breaks and uses his height and his pace to take some marks in dangerous areas and then kick you inside 50, have a few shots at goal, be a key part of score involvements. Didn't see any of that. Doesn't mean he doesn't have it in his game. It just wasn't the role that he was playing or the day for it. So I'm excited to see him showcase that sort of stuff, hopefully at home on Sunday against the Saints. But, you'd rather have this stuff showcased first, getting your hands dirty, the appetite for the tackle, comfortable in the clinches on the MCG. That's great to see from a player who's so young, who really we've snared as an absolute bonus pick.
Yeah, I just think the building blocks are there. Yeah. And we can see like Newcombe is actually a good example. They're both bigger-bodied midfielders. When Newcombe came into the team, he was getting 10, 15 possessions and high tackle numbers, and now he's playing like a fully fledged all-round midfielder. I mean, if he's going to follow potentially that curve, then that's a good thing for us. So, yeah, I think we said at the time the people who know the draft have sort of valued him as a top sort of 15 to 20 draft pick. So we've got him for almost nothing really. So that's a great result for us. And he looked good on the weekend. Hopefully he plays a few more games and we can see more of his stuff. Just one on Shuey, just quickly. When he picked up that ball from a throw-in and snapped a goal, we were like, hang on a second. Is the old Luke Shuey just popping his head out?
It was a nice moment, wasn't it? Yeah, I mean, he's going again, which is fantastic. He's still a quality midfielder. He just needs help around him as well. Like, he shouldn't be having to do that much. We need Yowie and Dom Sheed in there too. So he's being asked to do a lot at his age and it's taxing. So That's the only shame about it all. He's still got all the moves, and he's still got intensity and passion about him, and the legs are holding up. So yeah, it's great to see him playing the way that he is at the moment, and he managed to snare a vote as well in the Nest Medal vote. Should we get onto those, or any more points from the game you want to bring up, Drewy?
How did you watch? I was at Fox Footy, so I was juggling a few different things. Yeah. Did you watch the game really closely?
I did, yeah. I watched it really closely and
so
enjoyed it.
So was Witherden on Bruce for most of the game, or was it changing hands?
He was, and I think that the score line for Bruce was probably a bit unfair on Witho. There were a couple of dodgy free kicks. In fact, before we move on, we should talk about a couple of free kicks. But there were a couple of free kicks I thought were harsh against him. Couple of moments, he had those Witho defensive moments when you went, you just struggle in those areas. Second half, he really stepped it up. He did. He improved a lot defensively. And you just went, if you could just string that together for 4 quarters, you could be such a good halfback in the AFL. But he just has those moments where Luke Bruce, a very experienced player, just knows how to exploit him. I'd like to see him play on weaker forwards, if that makes sense. Like, just don't give him such a big responsibility so that he doesn't feel overawed by that. He can use his strengths going the other way. We seem to give him tough tasks at times. Do you know what I mean? And that makes it a bit more difficult for him to have a solid 4-quarter performance.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of his development. We'll have to wait and see. So, Nest Medal votes?
Yeah, just quickly, a couple of, umpiring, I thought we were up against in the first half. We had a bad run in the first half. Second half, I didn't notice too much of it, and they got given denied a shocker when Bruce caught Brady Hoff holding the ball, should have been holding the ball, and then the Hawks fans all started going nuts. Oh, you guys have had a good run, blah, blah, blah. The non-deliberate call against Denver Granger Barrass for Cripps tackle in the pocket is the worst call I've seen this season. And that's probably a big shout because there's been a few. How on earth that wasn't given? I just went, the umpire's close to the Hawthorn fans, doesn't want to give away a free kick against him. And there were a couple of square-ups our way after that. It was that bad. Did you see it?
No, I actually don't. I saw your tweet.
Mate.
Was it a Lenny?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't her. She had a couple of bad ones, but it wasn't her. She actually gave us a couple back after that, I think. So I reckon she saw it and went, that is so bad. And we got
always loved her.
And then we got a couple of 50-50s our way after that. We deserved about 7 square-ups. We probably got 2. I mean, he got tackled by Cripps and literally handballed it over his shoulder over the boundary line. No one else around him. And they throw it in. Oh, it was
wild.
Pathetic. Anyway, it wasn't too bad after that. It wasn't the reason we lost the game. But I thought that decision, as bad as it was, needs to be highlighted, and I'm sure many fans listening agree with me. So the votes, Tommy Barrass 5, that was a lock. Shannon Hurn 4, another good performance. We gave Jack Darling a 3, who worked really well up forward, up against a good defender in James Sicily, took a lot of marks, had the most contested marks for an Eagle, kicked a couple of goals. Another good performance from him. He deserved credit. Jai Culley got the 2 for a string of tackles on debut and giving us a real physical presence inside, especially after Tim Kelly was limited with that corky, and then Luke Shuey got the 1. And then we did the 5-1 as well from the Carlton loss, which was disappointing. And the 5 and 4 for that game at home were obvious. Shannon Hurn got the 5, Liam Duggan got the 4. And then going through all the submissions, Luke Shuey got 3, Tim Kelly got 2, and Jermaine Jones, he's doing okay across halfback. He got 1 vote in that game, which means Tommy Barrass, Drewy, is out to 31 in the Nest Medal. So he's cruising ahead. Tim Kelly is on 25 in second spot. Gov's still there on 23. Redden's on 19. And Shannon Hurn's up to 19 all of a sudden. So he's moving up there, and Luke Shuey's gaining as well. But Tommy Barrass, 31. He's now 6 clear of Tim Kelly, who's on 25 in second place. Gov's still holding, but he's not playing again this season. I think that's a good sign that Tommy Barrass will be way ahead in the Eagles' best and fairest.
Yeah, he will absolutely win his first John Worsfold medal. And as you said, he'll certainly be in the All-Australian 40. He's had a great season.
All right. Drew, you got some questions from our listeners before we need to get onto the St Kilda game?
Yeah, so I just wanted to put out there some questions about what people have made of our young players. And then, Garby, I'm just going to put to you my power rankings for 2022, just while I'm getting up this this list. Can you guess who I had as our number 2 prospect halfway through last season? Could you guess?
Last season. I know you're a big Luke Foley fan. Was it Foles?
Nah, because Foley, I reckon, only just played maybe his second game. I reckon I did it after the Carlton game. Our number 2 prospect, according to me, last season was Jared Brander, no longer at the club.
He can't get a game.
His first half of last season was really good. Anyway, so I've got Oscar Allen 1.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree on that.
Yep.
And I've got now Campbell Chesser in as number 2.
Interesting. Yeah.
Brady Hoff 3.
Yeah.
Culley 4.
Yeah.
And Bazzo 5. Do you have any issues with that top 5?
Ooh. I mean, Chesser's high for someone who hasn't played a game. I know why you've done it. First round draft pick and all. I'd have Bazzo a bit higher. I'd have Bazzo up as high as maybe 3. I know that Hoff's shown more. I just think for a key position player to be getting the run that he is, the cleanliness of his hands, I think he's going to be a quality player for us. I'd have Bazzo above Culley, definitely.
Yep.
So I'd switch those 2 around. The rest I'm comfortable with.
And then I've got Foley, Bailey Williams, Luke Edwards, O'Neill and Jamison to round out the top 10.
Yeah. So that probably says a lot about us. Like, nothing against those players. They probably all stay on the list. I mean, Foley, I think, will come into his own a bit more. There's question marks over O'Neill and Jamison and as to how far they go, and even Bailey Williams. But that gives you a good sign as to what we need to do in the off-season. Like this draft coming up, we're going to have 4 picks inside 40, hey, Drewy?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's where all of a sudden that starts changing, doesn't it? Like, those players potentially drop down a little bit and they're replaced with a bunch of new guys who are, just better propositions on paper. That's probably where we can improve things a little bit more. But obviously those guys get more exposure as well and grow from the experience they've had so far.
Well, I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say this is the draft where we potentially pick up some premiership players, the future premiership players, and maybe a Norm Smith medalist. Like, we've got to nail this.
Yeah.
And you can end up with 4. Like, we might look back at the 2022 draft and go, geez, what a year that was, because it set us up. So hopefully that's the way it pans out. And then I've got Harry Edwards and Jermaine and Zane and Isaiah.
Harry Edwards has dropped off a lot. That's really been disappointing. I know he's mentioned it before, but again on the weekend, he just used to be so composed under pressure. His confidence has really dropped. There was a moment again on the weekend where he just, under pressure, gave it up. They kicked a goal. And you just weren't doing that in your first 10 games, Harry. You were always giving it off to an eagle in defensive 50 when we're under the pump. Now he's just panicking a bit. His confidence has really dropped off. I wonder where he is physically. Looks a little bit heavy. I know he's got that body set, but just doesn't seem to be in a good spot all round, unfortunately.
I think he'll benefit from a more competitive West Coast Reserves team and just spend some time in the waffle developing a bit further. So from the listeners, Shanae says, Hoff, the most impressive in my opinion. Still a long way to go, but he has had an impact in every game he's played. Yep. Culley, Bazzo and West also looking good. O'Neill and Jamo improving every game. Brendan Singh, Culley impressive, shows will still be able to impact games without huge disposal numbers. O'Neill hit the contest really hard, liked his aggressiveness. Foley, whilst playing out of position, I thought he was really weak in a few contests. Foley's still got a bit of work to go, no doubt about that.
Just quickly, it was interesting. Yeah. O'Neill and Foley played as like half-forward taggers on Jath and Scrimshaw. I like that. They gave them roles to play. It was a tactic there. Hawthorn gets a lot of run-off halfback, Scrimshaw and Jath. They both did solid jobs. I just like the tactic.
Yeah, me too. Redders been immensely impressed with Cal Jamison, Connor West, Brady Hoff this season when they've played. Obviously, Jai had a great debut, but the future is bright. Convinced Jamo and Hoff will be stars. So on Jamison, I just think he just needs a trick of some sort.
Yeah.
And he still needs to bulk up. He's got a couple of years potentially still to get a bit bigger because he's not going to compete against most ruckmen in the comp. Candace, Hoffman, Bazzo, really liking their games. If we had a full squad, no way they'd be playing. Think it's good for their development to keep playing senior footy. Bailey looks really strong at times and sometimes really poor. I think pack Nick up for the year and see what Bailey's got. Lots of love for Hoff here. People aren't sold on Bailey Williams. That's a theme across the board. And I think we've generally been Bailey apologists. Yeah. I think what he does have, Garby, which a ruckman needs, is he's got presence. Like he's big, he's aggressive. So if he ends up being a long-term, 7 to 12 game per season player at West Coast as a backup ruckman / forward, I don't think that's such a bad thing. Like him coming in and smashing blokes and being competitive in the ruck, like that's kind of what you need on your list.
Yeah, and they take a long time to develop. You look at Darcy Fort. I mean, he's been in the AFL for how long, and he's only now starting to show his quality. Like Matt Flynn at the Giants is playing pretty well. He got drafted in 2015. I know he had injuries, but sometimes they only start really affecting games at 25 unless you're a freak. Like a first-round draft pick. It takes a long time to build the confidence and the tank and the body and all that. Bailey is well built, though, so I think we'd like to see a bit more. I'd like to see him do a little bit more around the ground. He's not slow. He's got a bit of movement in him. He's not uncoordinated. I think he can do a bit more around the ground and take a few more marks up forward because he's got a big grab in him. But I've liked his improvement in the ruck over the last month. I think his actual centre square work, maybe that's been the focus, has gone up a level. That's been pleasing to see.
All right, we've only got a couple of minutes, Garby, so give me some St Kilda thoughts before we round off.
I think they're there for the taking. So Paddy Ryder's out, big blow for them. I've still got Marshall. We don't have a quality ruck set up at the moment, so they should be able to cope with it. Barrass on King, keep him quiet. Their confidence is low. They were terrible against the Dogs. They're still a good team, but I think they're there. I think they're there for the taking. If they don't start well, the seeds of doubt will creep into their mind even more. We're playing late on Sunday. A few results, Drewy, go against them. And the back of their mind, their thoughts of making the 8, the confidence starts to dwindle a little bit. We might be able to take advantage. It's a winnable game, and I'd love to see us get another 4 points.
I'm sure Ratton will be saying, let's do some damage early. Don't give West Coast hope at home in front of their home crowds. Take them to deep water and see if they can swim. I think that's what Lee Matthews used to say. So the Eagles absolutely are a chance of winning because St Kilda were absolutely putrid last week. But also that means there's going to be some sort of bounce back factor, and potentially their season is on the line on Sunday. So there should be enough motivation for the Saints to turn up with at least something close to their A game. Cal Jamison hurt his adductor on the weekend, so it'll be interesting to see what we do with the ruck, whether they bring in Rotham as the second ruck, like he's been playing in the waffle. That would be fascinating.
Hey, chuck Harry Edwards in there. I'd throw him in and just say, you're struggling a bit down back. Barrass takes Max King. Bazzo can take someone else. And I'd just throw Harry in a little bit and just move him around the ground a bit and just get him involved a bit more. Get him out of that defensive role where he just seems to be a little bit void of confidence at the moment and just free him up a bit.
Should be a good game. Turn up to Optus Stadium in WA and shout the boys on and come on. I think positive attitude, little wins, and enjoy the game with no pressure and with friends and family, I reckon.
I'd like to see Clark and Naish come in, Drewy. I think they've both been going well stats-wise anyway in the waffle. I think Naish deserves another go. I think we forget how good his first month was. I'd love to see him back in the team. I think both he and Clark, we need to see more of them. They've shown enough so far this season to be given another crack at it. So I'd like to see both of them come in and give us a bit of run, a bit more exuberance. I'm not sure for who exactly. I mean, Kelly might not recover from that knock. That would dilute our chances enormously of winning the game if his corky hasn't come up. But I'd love to see those two in the side.
Yeah, agree. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity to look at them. We need to gather as much information about some of these young players as possible. So great opportunity to get them in.
Good work, Drewy. Thanks everyone for listening and your feedback. Keep it coming. And we'll see a bit more of you online, and we're looking forward to gathering your thoughts during the week. And let's hope the Eagles have a win against the Saints on Sunday. Drury, thanks so much, mate.
On you, Gabby.
This week at Safeway, shop the 10 for $10 produce sale. With the 10 for $10 produce sale, get items like large avocados, mangoes, green, red, orange, or yellow bell peppers, cucumbers, large lemons, or 16-ounce bags of Signature Farms baby peeled carrots for the member price of just $1 each. Plus, select meats like Signature Farms 80% lean ground beef and Signature Select extra meaty pork loin back ribs are buy one, get one free this week. Hurry in before these deals are gone. Visit Safeway.com for more deals.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.